What is going on, everybody? We are on the final lap of this Friday the 13th franchise. We got Jason X, we got the remake, and we got the fan film Never Hike Alone to talk about before this Friday, April 13th, Friday the 13th, when I end on a couple of ranking videos. Cannot wait to get through these last couple. Been a blast going through these movies, and you know, now that I think about it, this background is just not going to work. It's been done to death. I've done so many movie reviews with this background behind me. You know, the fans are clamoring for more, so I got to give them more.
Upgrade completed.
So Jason X tells the story of Jason Voorhees being cryogenically frozen for 400 years and then being woken back up to unleash hell upon a new generation. Well, we're here, people, the end of the Kane Hodder era in the Friday the 13th franchise. Now, this is a very debated movie amongst Friday the 13th fans, and it's very much love or hate. There's very few people that are in the middle on this one. Some people think this is one of the biggest abominations of this franchise, and some people think that this is one of the biggest examples of a guilty pleasure, so bad that it's good, enjoyable little slasher movie. The entire concept about launching a horror icon into space has kind of become a bit of a bad joke, and I think it might have started with this movie, even though Leprechaun also went into space. But the funny thing is whenever they were brainstorming and spitballing ideas for another movie after Jason Goes to Hell, because they weren't ready to do Freddy vs. Jason yet, that was still stuck in development hell, and they needed to do something to hang on to the rights of this movie. You know, the board members were all talking about all these ideas. Somebody threw out space as a bad joke. Everybody had their little laugh. And unfortunately, they couldn't find anything better throughout the rest of their time in the boardroom. So they just said, you know what, we'll just go back to space and we'll do that. But I gotta be honest, as ridiculous as that concept is, as much of a bad joke as that concept is, and as half-assed as a lot of the aspects is actually executed in this movie for that concept, I think if you're gonna launch any of the big major horror icons into space, Jason is definitely the one that's going to be the most fun to play with. Now, with that being said, going right into my positives for this movie, if you can tell watching my reviews, for the most part, I think this franchise succeeds the most in entertainment value whenever it doesn't take itself too seriously. You got Jason Lives that kind of started that trend where they realized some of it was really hokey, some of it was really stupid, but they just ran with it and had fun with it, and it made for one of the more entertaining movies in this franchise. Now, I know it was a controversial opinion. I had the same thing with Jason Goes to Hell, where it was such a unique, balls to the wall, weird concept, and it didn't take itself too seriously that I actually enjoyed the hell out of it. And that carries over into Jason X. The fact that Jason Voorhees is running around in a futuristic space station, hacking people to death in some really creative ways, and we'll get into that, to me, it makes for a very fun experience if you're on board for it. And one of the major reasons why that concept ends up being so much fun in its execution is the kills. Now, thank God, just like Jason Goes to Hell, the MPAA fucked off and just stayed away from this movie, because gory kills are necessary as hell in a slasher, and the kills in this movie are pretty damn awesome. There's two of them especially where they're actually probably in my top 5, top 10 Jason kills. Now, the one that everybody always talks about with this movie is awesome, the cryo head freeze, whenever he just takes the chick's head, puts it in the cryo bath, pulls it up, smashes her head into a little bloody slushy all over the table.
No! No! No!
That's kick-ass. And the other one that I love is whenever he knocks the dude over the stairwell, and for whatever reason, this space station decides it's a good idea to have some gigantic sharp corkscrew sticking up through the fucking floor, and he hits the top of it and just slowly rotates down the threads of the corkscrew. That's an awesome kill and very creative. Now, creativity is another thing that's very important in kills on a slasher, and there was some creativity in Jason X's kills. I also liked how they kind of harkened back to the famous kill in Part 7 about the sleeping bag kill.
Hey, you want a beer?
Or do you want to smoke some pot?
Or we can have premarital sex.
It's always fun for a fan of the franchise to watch a movie and you get like a little bit of a wink and a nod to something that the fans beloved about an older movie, at the same time having fun with it in Jason X. Another positive, I actually think that this is the most fun that I have with Kane Hodder in his little 4-movie run. I think that he's actually really good at Jason in this. You know, he has kind of a presence. He has that same Kane Hodder breathing and, you know, just the bulky, hulky Jason thing, but you know, it's played for fun in this one. And not only that, but I feel like all of the extremity of the kills and all the fun of the kills makes Kane Hodder be a little bit more fun for me to watch him just slaying through all of these characters. So I like Kane Hodder in this movie. And I like his look too. He's got 2 looks in this movie. He's got the regular Jason look with, you know, kind of an update. He's got hair. That's the only real difference. I'm not a big fan of the hair, but everything else, just kind of the shape. It feels like the costume is kind of catered to Kane Hodder's bulky, kind of more stocky look, and it looks pretty cool. And then you get to the Uber Jason part, which is where this movie kind of goes crazy, and it's where the Jason X title kind of comes from, about him kind of becoming the Super Shredder for all you Ninja Turtle fans out there. And he looks kind of like a chrome Terminator version of Jason. And now, I like the regular look of Jason better, but I do like the way that they kind of had the Uber Jason look. It makes the last 20-30 minutes of this movie a little bit fun and a little bit unique. Now, one of the characters I actually really like in this, and that's Rowan. She's basically your final girl in this. Now, the first half of the movie especially, I think she's a really strong character. She's badass, she doesn't take any shit, she's really trying to, like, take Jason down with everything that she has. I mean, that's a very strong female stance to take against something that's gonna fuck up anything in his path. So I like that about her character, and especially after he gets kind of thawed out, and she has to be the voice of reason for all these dumb fucks 400 years in the future and be like, it's Jason fucking Voorhees, that's what's going on, bitch. Unfortunately, in the second half of the movie, it almost feels like her character gets pushed to the background and kind of loses a little bit of the focus of the story on her. But for the first half of the movie, I feel like she's a really good character to follow and a good compliment for Jason, just to have somebody that's kind of in that watered down Tommy Jarvis role where she has this mission to take down Jason Voorhees. And my last positive for the movie, which kind of goes along with my positive for the fun concept, is I do enjoy the setting of the space station. I feel like it could have been a little bit better and a little bit more polished, and I'm going to get into that very soon with my negatives, but you know, the concept of putting Jason into a space station and having a little bit of a palate cleanser of always having him in the woods, always having him at a camp, always having him at Crystal Lake. I feel like it's interesting. Whenever you see Jason walking around, it's what I wanted from Jason Takes Manhattan, a new setting. And fortunately, this movie, the entirety of the movie, aside from the opening, takes place in the setting that they promise us. Now, moving into my negatives, I feel like they could have done the setting a little bit better though, because it feels very Sci-Fi Channel neon looking. You know what I mean? It doesn't have like that kind of gritty space look that a lot of space horror movies are known for. It looks very odd. It's kind of the more pretty and flashy futuristic. Now that works for some movies. To me, it doesn't really work for a Friday the 13th movie. You know, I feel like if you're gonna put Jason or any horror icon really in space, you gotta bring that darkness and that grit and that tone of the rest of the franchise to this movie to make it feel a little bit more in tune with the rest of the franchise. And that's where I feel like a lot of people just kind of have the bad taste in their mouth for Jason X, because it feels like such a weird B-movie, C-movie take on the character that just doesn't flow with the rest of the franchise. And I think 90% of that is because of the setting, the way that they chose the colors and the palettes and the lighting. Moving on from that, aside from Rowan, every other character in this movie is dog shit. All the writing, all the acting, they're terrible. Now they're utilized well for what this movie's going for, just a B-movie, schlocky space slasher movie starring Jason Voorhees. You just want to see him slay through people anyway, so why put a whole lot of effort into the characters, I guess, when you have a decent one like Rowan. But some of the characters are shockingly bad. Like, some of them are to the point where you're like, wow, you couldn't have gotten anybody off of the street corner that could have done a better job than that? Really? And just the writing of them is bad alone, because I mean, I don't remember many characters of this movie. I just watched it before doing this review. I remember Rowan, I remember the stoner kid, and I remember Jason. And that does drag the movie down quite a bit. Even though you enjoy seeing just meaningless characters for cannon fodder, you're spending the majority of the focus of the movie with these characters, with their personalities, with their weird little sex androids. That's a fucking weird character too.
Hey, Slappy! Got a little something for you. Wow. Gave her an upload.
Afraid I'm gonna have to hurt you now.
So when you spend most of the time with these characters and they're not entertaining, they're not interesting, they're not well acted, they're not well written, it does drag down your enjoyment level until you get back to the carnage. And the characters aren't the only thing that's badly written. The story, just getting Jason into space, that aspect of it is fine. Everything else is just, there's no writing. It's just, let Jason walk around the space station and we'll figure out how to fuck these people up in really creative ways. Now that's entertaining enough, but you could have done some interesting things with the story that could have made this movie be a little bit more beefy. Could have been a little bit more entertaining if they had some, something else for Jason to do, something else for these characters to do, especially, aside from just running around in halls, peeking around corners, and hoping they don't get their fucking head chopped off. And more bad writing is the dialogue. There is some horrendous dialogue in this movie, especially when they're trying to be funny. There is some jokes, or what they intend to be jokes in this movie, that fall so flat that you almost look around the room like, was that supposed to be funny?
I don't think he's out there.
Why don't you just stick your head out and have a peek?
Like the dude getting his nipples pinched and twisted around so that his student can get an A in class, like shit like that. You're looking at it and you're like, why the fuck is that in this movie? But the biggest, the most gigantic, glaring negative in Jason X is the computer-generated effects. This movie dates itself so bad that even though this takes place in the early 2000s, the movies in the early 80s age better than this movie. This is right in the, that little crux of the early 2000s when a lot of movies started doing a lot of heavy CGI effects. This is after The Matrix kind of took over and made everybody computer-generated effects crazy. And this was way before the time whenever they started nailing CGI effects. To be honest, they really didn't even start nailing it until just a couple years ago. You go back to early 2000s effects, it's some of the worst effects you're ever going to see in any era of filmmaking. I mean, it's shockingly horrible. I have seen video games from Sega Genesis that look better than some of the graphics that you see in Jason X. And not only is it distracting, not only does it drag your entertainment value down, not only does it make the movie feel cheap like it was something on the Sci-Fi Channel, but like I said, it dates it so bad that I feel like 20 years from now, hopefully we get some good Friday the 13th movies between now and then, but 20 years from now, people will still be watching the first 4, 6, maybe even 8 of the Friday the 13th movies and going, oh, these are still accessible, these are still aged well, and then you'll get to Jason X and you'll go, what the fuck happened here? It's kind of like when you're watching a YouTube video and your internet signal starts to get shitty, so it drags it down to like 120p and it looks like something off of an old 1990s soap opera television with a bad antenna signal compared to the full 1080p HD that you normally get. Yeah, that's kind of the difference we're going with here about how these effects age. But despite all those negatives, overall, I think this is still a fun installment in the Friday the 13th franchise. It's not a prestigious installment. This is never going to be anybody's favorite. This is not even going to be even in my top 5 or anywhere close to it. But if I threw this movie on with a group of friends that just want to watch a fun little slasher movie, guaranteed, no matter what age I am, I'm gonna have a blast. Not only with the good aspects of this movie, but making fun of and having this so bad that it's good experience with my friends on those aspects of the movie. So Jason X to me, very flawed, but still very fun. So if you're a fan of this franchise and you're craving a little bit different flavor of a Friday the 13th movie, go on this little adventure with Jason Voorhees in space, and I think you might have some fun with it. Prepare for some serious flaws, but some serious guilty pleasure enjoyment. Check this thing out on Netflix. So what do you guys think of Jason X? Are you in the camp that hates and despises this movie, or do you have a so bad that it's good enjoyment time with this movie? Did you see it in theaters? Did you take a bunch of friends? Tell me down below, what are your thoughts on Jason X, and we will talk about it. Please like and share this video, guys. Hit that subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber. If you guys want to check out my social media links, I got Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Spreadshirt, where you can get a lot of cool Cody Leach merchandise, and my Patreon page, which is a great way to give back to this channel and get some cool exclusive content for patron eyes only if you decide to become a patron. Check all that out, guys, down below. And if you want to check out some more of my videos, as always, you can check those out by clicking right over here.